Hi learners, this is another interesting lesson on life sciences, and we are going to deal with the section that deals with human endocrine system. This section is a revision because I know you already dealt with this, but what is really going on in this section or in this subtopic that is human endocrine system? Let's look at the following. We've got the concept map here that outlines exactly what we're going to deal with when we're dealing with endocrine system. We're going to look at the difference between the differences between endocrine system, and we're still going to put in exocrine system so that you can be able to differentiate between the two. And then what else are we going to look at? We're going to look at all the glands that are in the endocrine system and the types of hormones that they secrete and what is really a hormone. And then we'll continue with this section when we understand what is the difference between endocrine system, exocrine system, glands, their secretions, and what hormones are. Then the key words, every section that you're dealing with, you need to look at the key words, which are very important to know, because you know our subject, life sciences, terminology is too many. And for you to understand the concepts and all the concepts and how life sciences is going on and how the processes are going on, you need to know your terminologies. So in this section, we're looking at endocrine system, exocrine system, and hormones. But what about these key words? Let's continue now. Have you ever thought about these? Once I mentioned endocrine and exocrine, what went into your mind? Let's see if you had exactly what we are going to talk about. We're looking at the differences. This is key, the differences between endocrine and exocrine glands. The issue is, how do they differ? But for this year, you're only looking at the endocrine glands, but you need to know the differences between the endo and the exo. So let's get deep into it. This table now outlines exactly the difference between the endocrine gland that I talked to and the exocrine gland. But how do we differentiate the two? We say endocrine glands, they don't have the ducts. And exocrine glands, they do have the ducts. The question is, what is a duct? I think that is what is in your mind now. Ducts are nothing else, but you can compare them to the tubes. They are the delivering tubes of the hormones that are secreted by these glands. So if you look at the endocrine glands here, we say they are the types of glands without the tubes. But how do they secrete their secretions? They secrete their secretions directly into the bloodstream, which means blood is the one that delivers the secretions to the targets. Now, what about the endocrine glands? We say they do have the tubes that delivers what? The secretions. And where do these secretions go? They go to different, these are the examples of the glands that we're talking about that has got the ducts. But in the endocrine glands, these glands, they don't have the tubes. We said their secretions are delivered by the bloodstream. And what are the examples of these? We've got the thyroid gland, we've got the hypothalamus, we've got the pituitary gland, adrenal gland, pancreas, ovaries in females. Remember, only in females. And testes, only in males. This is key to know. And then these endocrine, secretes hormones. But the exocrine, they do not secrete hormones. Like we gave an example of the sweat glands. What is secreted? What is secreted from the sweat gland? It's sweat. So sweat is not a hormone. Now, we covered the difference. Now, let's move to these type of glands that we refer to them as endocrine glands. Remember, no ducts here. So, we're looking at, this is the brain, remember? We take our glands from the top to the bottom so that you can remember in your sleep when you look, thinking of your brain downwards. So, we've got the hypothalamus here on top here. At the posterior here, we've got the pituitary gland. That the hypothalamus here secrete the ADH. And the pituitary gland here secrete, this is the pituitary gland that I was talking to, that is here at the bottom. It secretes the growth hormone, follicle stimulating hormone, thyroid stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, and prolactin. These are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hormones that are secreted. These 5 hormones are secreted by the pituitary gland. Now, I said you start from the top, we go down. Let's move. Now, we come into this gland that is H-shaped, that is referred to as the thyroid gland, that secretes thyroxine. Then, we're moving again to the next one. I said we've started from here, we went to here, now we're moving down. Down here we've got this gland on top of the kidneys. These glands on top of the kidneys that are referred to as adrenal gland. And the adrenal gland secrete adrenaline. And we've got this ductless gland again, that is the pancreas, that secrete the glucagon and the insulin. That we'll talk about here when we're talking about the sugar control. Then, remember, pancreas can function as an endocrine gland and as an exocrine gland. For now, we're looking at pancreas as an endocrine gland that secretes the glucagon and the insulin, the 2 hormones. And we move to the, now we go to the bottom now. We are now looking at the female glands here. These are the ovaries. The ovaries secrete 2 hormones. That is the estrogen and the progesterone. Then when we move to the males, we've got the testes here that are covered by the scrotum. The testes are the endocrine glands that secretes the testosterone. Now, we discuss all the types of hormones from the top to the bottom and the types of hormones that are secreted. Let's now go further to see more or study more on this. Now, if you look at this table, it's going to make your life easy to understand, remember the hormones and their targets and functions. So we start at the top again. We're looking at the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus secretes ADH. I said for you to write down this name or it's going to be a little bit difficult. You are allowed to use the acronym. It's called ADH or vasopressin if you want to use that word. But what is the target of this hormone? Is the kidney. And what is this function of this ADH on the kidney? It stimulates reabsorption of water into the tubules and then protects the body against dehydration. So for the kidney to reabsorb water, it obviously protect your body against dehydration. Then we continue with our glands. We've got now the pituitary gland still in the brain there that secrete the thyroid stimulating hormone. What is the target here? The target will be the thyroid gland. And what will be the function of this TSH? It stimulates growth of the thyroid gland and again stimulates thyroid gland to secrete the thyroxine. Remember when we started, we said the thyroid gland secrete thyroxine. Then, still on the pituitary gland, it secretes the follicle stimulating hormone. The follicle stimulating hormone now will target the ovaries in the females and the testes in males. So what would be the function of this follicle stimulating hormone? In the females, it stimulates the development of the follicle and stimulate ovaries to produce estrogen, and again stimulates development of the ova. I put this egg here. We're talking human beings. Human beings don't have a shell. So we're not using the word egg for human beings. We use the word ova or ovum. And in males, the follicle stimulating hormone stimulates the testes to produce spermatozoa. Learners, we covered the endocrine glands, their secretions, their targets, and function. Now we are going to go for a break so that you can just have a glass of water and come back. See you after this break. Hi guys, we're back from the ad break. We continue. You are refreshed, you are ready to listen and to understand and revise exactly what you learned before. So let's continue. We did the difference between endocrine and exocrine. We looked at the glands and where they are positioned and their secretions and the type. The secretions, I mean the type of hormones that they secrete. And now we're going to look at this part, homeostasis. What is really homeostasis? I believe this word now is resonating in your brains. You're trying to remember what homeostasis means. Remember, the hormones are secreted, and hormones are those secretions that are secreted by the glands. And now when we're talking about homeostasis, we are looking at human beings, don't forget. Now, homeostasis is nothing else but the process whereby the body gets the internal environment balanced. So we are going to look at different factors that the body balances and how it balances its internal environment independently so. So let's continue now. The keywords under homeostasis, it's homeostasis on its own. Remember I explained what homeostasis is. I said is the process whereby the body maintains the internal environment constant. Then we're going to look at the negative feedback mechanism. Negative feedback mechanism happens for homeostasis to take place. And we're going to look at thermoregulation. Thermoregulation is the regulation of the temperature, how the body regulates the temperature. Osmoregulation, we're talking about the body regulating the water level. And then we are going to look at vasodilation and vasoconstriction. Here, you should know the difference here, what is to constrict and what is to dilate. For you to understand these words correctly, always, if possible, break them into two, and then you'll get the understanding. But here, the content and the understanding and the functioning, you'll see when we continue. Now, we look into negative feedback mechanism. I explained homeostasis, the internal environment that is kept balanced. Now we're looking at the negative feedback mechanism. Negative feedback mechanism is an interaction. What? Interaction between two hormones in which one hormone stimulates increase and another hormone which then inhibits. So, we're talking about a hormone that will be increased and the hormone that will be inhibited. That's when now we're looking at the negative feedback mechanism. So we say negative feedback mechanism is an interaction between two hormones. What is happening between the two hormones? One hormone stimulates the increase and the other one will be inhibited. So the first hormone will be during this process whereby we see one hormone being stimulated to increase and one be decreased or inhibited to be secreted. It's when now we're looking at the negative feedback mechanism. You can see now it's an interaction between the two hormones. The other one makes the secretion to be high, and then the secretion is going down. So that's how I said negative feedback mechanism. It's the process that will take us where we were talking about the homeostasis as a process whereby the body maintains internal balance. So, we're looking at the following sequence of events for what to take place for negative feedback mechanism to take place. These are the 7 steps, guys, that you should bear in mind. That will make you remember when you are asked any question based on the negative feedback mechanism whether they're asking you a question on thermoregulation, osmoregulation, or sugar regulation, or we can say glucose regulation. These 7 steps that we're going to go through, they will help you to remember and to be able to answer the questions that are based on negative feedback mechanism. What are these steps? The first thing that will happen is the imbalance that will be detected. But this imbalance should be detected by the receptor. So, once the receptor detects an imbalance, something must happen. Let's see what is going to happen. Then the control center will be stimulated. What is going to happen after the control center has been stimulated? Something must happen again. This control center that is stimulated need to respond. Once the stimulation takes place, there must be a response. So the control center in this case will respond. So how is it going to respond? We continue with 4th step. Then the message is now sent to the target. Remember, we did talk to the target. We said the hormones must have a target and they are secreted where the secretion go exactly to the target. So step number 4, a message will be sent to the target or the organ, which are the effectors. What are we talking about when we are talking about the effectors? The effectors are nothing else but the targets in this case. Targets or organs, they are the effectors. We started by saying the receptors will be will detect the imbalance. Remember, we're talking about the internal environment. So imbalance is detected by the receptors. And in the control center, the stimulation that is taking place, this stimulation now in the control center will do what? Will respond. Then when it is responding, the response is sending a message to the target, which are the effectors in this case. Then the fifth step, message is sent to the effector at this point. What will happen now? The effector also must respond. If you are given a message, there's no way that you cannot respond. The effector now respond. How will this effector respond? Let's move to the next step. Then it opposes or give a reverse that should give the reverse to the imbalance. Then after the effector responds, it gives what? It opposes the imbalance that was detected. Then if it opposes that, it reverses the imbalance. Then once it reverses the imbalance that was detected at step number 1, then what will happen? The balance in the internal environment will be restored, which means now whatever was detected as being imbalanced inside our body, then at that time, after the reverse has been done, then the body goes back to its balanced situation, or it restores the balance inside the body, which means homeostasis now took place. All these 7 steps are steps that talks to homeostasis, maintaining the balance inside our system, internal environment. Then let's look at how homeostasis is taking place. We have step 1 here. We're talking homeostasis. We need balance. The receptor, remember we said the receptor will detect the imbalance. And then the control center will do what? Will respond and send the message to the effector. That is number 4. And what is going to happen? The effector will reverse the imbalance, and then the balance will be restored. That is a simple sketch or just a circle that will make you understand homeostasis easier with the steps that we dealt with and with this diagram that makes you to remember, or that will make you to have the better understanding of how homeostasis is taking place. Then we're looking at maintenance of water level, homeostasis, maintaining the internal, the balance of the internal environment. But now we are looking at water level. Then here, remember we did talk to osmoregulation in the beginning. Regulation. So we're looking at how the water inside our bodies is maintained at a balance, at a level where we refer to it as a balanced level. See how it works. Remember the 7 steps. This is the negative feedback mechanism of osmoregulation. 7 steps, remember? The pituitary glands here. In this case, we're looking at the feedback mechanism in the control of water balance, osmoregulation. Here, it's where now we see normal water level. So, let's look at this one. The water level now decreases. A detection has taken place. There's a low water level. The pituitary gland here will secrete more because we've got less water level in our system. Then the pituitary gland will act. How? It will produce more ADH. Then what will happen? Permeability of collecting ducts and the distal convoluted tubules will increase so that more water is reabsorbed because water decreased. So we need more water. So more water will be reabsorbed into the blood. Then what will happen? Immediately when more water is reabsorbed into the blood, then water will go back to normal. So in a case water level increases, what is going to happen? What is going to happen? What do you think? Remember the pituitary gland. Remember the hormones that are secreted in the pituitary gland. Again, the pituitary gland will act. Then the pituitary gland stops secreting ADH. Why it stops? Because we've got too much water in our system. Then the permeability of collecting ducts and the distal convoluted tubules will decrease. So that what should happen? Less water shouldn't be reabsorbed into the blood. So more water is lost. If water is not reabsorbed, so more water will be lost. Once more water is lost here, then the level of water goes back to normal. Then we're looking at the salt, how the body maintains the salt. Then again, we're looking at what happens when the salt in the blood decreases. Then we see adrenal glands here secrete more aldosterone. Why more aldosterone? So that reabsorption of sodium ions increases. Then salt level in the blood increases. And it will take us back to normal level of salt because it decreased here. So salt level in the blood will now increase. Then it takes us to a normal level of salt in the system. In a case salt level increases, what is going to happen? The opposite. Adrenal gland again will stop the secretion of aldosterone, meaning less aldosterone will be secreted. So what will happen? Reabsorption of sodium ions into the blood will decrease. When it decreases, the level of salt now in the blood decreases. Then it takes the level of salt back to normal. Carbon dioxide concentration in our system. How do we maintain it balanced? Feedback mechanism, negative feedback mechanism again on this. We're looking at one, increase in carbon dioxide. And the level decrease the pH and decrease in oxygen. So what will happen? The receptors will detect. Then low pH detected by chemoreceptors. Remember the levels. Then the control center, the impulse will send to the impulses will be sent to medulla oblongata. Learners, it's key to tell the real part, the specific part of the brain. Don't just say brain, but what in the brain? The medulla oblongata. Then what will happen here? The respiratory muscles, the diaphragm, and intercostal muscle increase the rate and depth of the breathing. Once breathing increases, then the heart muscles will also increase the heart rate. Then the heart rate increased here, more carbon dioxide will be removed from the body. Then when more carbon dioxide is removed, we see level of carbon dioxide here dropping. The pH of the blood returns to normal. This is nothing else but the negative feedback mechanism of carbon dioxide concentrations. Now, guys, I know you understood the control of carbon dioxide concentration in our system. Now we move into glucose level in our system. Then, remember we are revising. We're looking at this point where glucose level is high in our system. The pancreas will be involved when the glucose is high. So what will the pancreas do? The pancreas will secrete this hormone, insulin. Why insulin? So that insulin should convert. Remember first, before we move forward, the glucose level is high in our blood system. Pancreas involved secrete insulin so that the insulin should convert glucose into glycogen so that this glycogen can be stored in the liver. And then once the glucose has been converted into glycogen and then stored in the liver, it will come back to normal. Now, in a case we are in a situation where blood glucose level drops, what is going to happen? Again, the pancreas is involved. In this case, the pancreas will secrete glucagon. For what purpose? So that glucagon can convert glycogen that was stored into glucose. And the glucose now will be absorbed into our blood, and it will now take the glucose blood level to normal. Now we're looking at thyroxine level, homeostasis, keeping it balanced. How do we keep it balanced? The red here, now we see thyroxine level being low in our blood system. So what is going to happen if the blood glucose is low or the level has dropped? And then B here, we're looking at thyroxine level being high. So what is going to happen if this happens? Here now, we're looking at the normal level. So in this case, thyroxine is not normal. Then the pituitary gland will secrete more. It's key to say more thyroxine stimulating hormone. So where does it go? It goes to the thyroid gland. Then more thyroxine will be secreted. Then thyroxine level will come back to normal because it was low. Then when thyroxine level is too high, what will happen? Again, we start with our pituitary gland that will release less because now thyroxine is high. It will release or secrete less thyroxine stimulating hormone. For what? For the thyroid gland to release or secrete less thyroxine. So when less thyroxine is secreted now, we will experience the level of thyroxine that is dropping or decreases. That will take back to normal. That will make the level of thyroxine in our system normal. And then the cycle continues like that because when we started here, we said it is high. Then this is the process. Then we continue to the next one, body temperature. how homeostasis takes place or how body temperature is maintained at its normal level. We're looking at the situation where it's cold and when it is hot. What is happening when it is cold? When it is cold now, the capillaries the vasoconstriction will take place, which means the capillaries will constrict. These capillaries now, they are near the skin surface, and they will conserve the heat once the constriction takes place. And in a case that we are in a hot environment, heat will be lost. Then how is this heat lost? The capillaries dilate, they become bigger, they open up. So we are talking vasodilation. So this happens near the skin surface to lose heat because it is too hot. The body must maintain its normal temperature. So we're looking at the bottom here. We've got the structure of the skin. We're looking at the sweat glands here, where they're coming from. We've got the sweat glands here. The sweat glands will now stop secretion because now here it is cold. Then here, when it is hot, what will happen? We've got the sweat glands here. Then the sweat gland begin to secrete sweat. And this sweat will cause heat loss by evaporation. You can see here, we see the heat that is going out here when it gets to the environment or to the atmosphere, then evaporation takes place. Guys, we covered the 7 aspects where we saw homeostasis taking place. I believe you understand how homeostasis is taking place. Now, let's take a little bit of a break. At break, I'll come back and we continue with our homeostasis. Thank you. Welcome back, guys. Let's now do the application of the information and knowledge that you gathered. Let's look at the questions now. The first question, we're having 3 diagrams where they show the reabsorption of salt and water through the tubules of the nephron. The nephron is found in the kidney under 3 different conditions. So we are looking at the width of the arrows that represent the amount of salt and the amount of water. The width here, we're talking about the thickness of the arrows. Here are the diagrams that I was referring to. We've got the first diagram here. Then we see the glomerula that filtrate with salt and water, the arrow that indicates salt and water getting into the renal tube, and we see water and salt. How do I know that it's water and salt? We've got the key here at the bottom. The white one represents water, the second one, the gray one the white represents salt, the gray represents water. Then we see the 2 arrows here. We see the water being reabsorbed, and we see salt being reabsorbed back into the system. We see the renal tubule here, and we see the 2 arrows again that represent water and salt. Down the water and salt be taken into the bladder with the urine. Then diagram number 2. Let's be vigilant now. The same diagram, but we're looking at the different thickness of the arrows. Now, if you look at water now here, water now and salt here. Salt is thicker here, and water is thin. So the diameter, the width of the arrows is not the same as in diagram number 2. Also, where we see water and salt go into the bladder, now the width of the arrows now is different from the arrows in diagram number 1. What about diagram number 3? Diagram number 3 still looks the same, but the difference is that the width of the arrow that represents water and the one that represents salt. And both in reabsorption and the one that is the ones that are taken into the urinary bladder. Then let's read the question. Question number 1 here says, name the hormone that is responsible for controlling water and salt. Guys, it's key to underline the key words, and it's key to understand what you are required to do in a question. So if we look at the question here, it's only 1 mark for each because we're just naming. This is the simple type of question. So we're just naming the hormones that are responsible for water content and salt content. Then, what are those hormones? ADH for water content and aldosterone for salt content. 1 mark for that. The next question here, we say, again it says name, but now we are naming the gland that secretes aldosterone. Let's see which hormone. Which gland? The adrenal gland is the one that secretes aldosterone. Because they said name what a gland. For how many marks? Only 1 mark. Easy questions. Then the next question will say which diagram between the 3 diagrams, remember the 3 diagrams that we interpreted at the beginning, will represent a person who has eaten salty chips. This is key, salty chips. On what? On a hot day without taking water. Then the answer there for this one will be diagram number 3. Diagram number 3 will be the answer. Why diagram number 3? Because when we look at diagram number 3 here, this person ate salty chips and did not take water, and it was hot. Then what is happening here? From the key of the salt and water, we see now more water is being reabsorbed into the system because this person is not taking water, and less salt is being reabsorbed. So if less salt is reabsorbed, then more salt will go into the urinary bladder to be taken out together with urine. So the next question says explain. This is a key word. Why diagram number 2, the answer that you gave. So for the question that says explain, there must be a cause and effect for answering that question. So the answer here, we're looking at this diagram number 3 that we explained, that we know what is going on, and we're looking at the answer now. The answer says the blood will have high salt content because the person ate salty chips, and therefore no aldosterone will be secreted. A tick for that because we have cause and effect. Then this will result in less salt being reabsorbed. If you look at the arrow here, it's thinner than the arrow of the water. Then it says this will result in less salt being reabsorbed into the blood. Then another mark for that, or you may say more salt excreted in the urine. Then the blood will have less water than normal. A tick. That's how you answer the question that says explain. We did questions. You were able to answer the questions. We were able to interpret questions from the concept that we studied. Then let's look at the summary of everything that we did. You must make sure that you can describe hormones. You can recall glands and the hormones that are secreted. You can be able to describe the functions of the hormones. And you must be able to give examples of diseases that are related to the excess or deficiency of certain hormones. This, like this one, with this is goiter. The diagram indicates goiter. That is the condition caused by increased thyroxine. Then, disorder caused by an imbalance in level of glucose. We are talking to diabetes mellitus. It's a disease that is associated with high glucose level. Then the summary again, we look at, you must be able to list 7 steps of negative feedback mechanisms that we dealt with. Recall 5 different negative feedback mechanisms that we did, and understand thermoregulation diagrams. Thank you guys for being with me throughout this lesson, and thank you for listening to me. I know you enjoyed the lesson, and thank you, thank you, thank you. Goodbye.